following. It's the gate of opinions. There's a logical gate in the Ajna Center, so it is a conceptualizing gate. And it is a logical conceptualizing gate. And its fundamental process is that it is always trying to place concepts within a pattern or a structure that can give that concept a sense of correctness. In other words, a concept that fits within a pattern, that the pattern itself is something that can be laid out and it can be recognized, and as such, it is something that can be tested, and if it's proven that the pattern is correct, then the pattern can be utilized. And of course, when we're dealing with the 17th gate and its harmonic gate, the 62nd gate, we're dealing with the channel of the organizational being, that is, this channel of acceptance. But this operates at many, many levels. One of the things to recognize about the 17th gate, and it is a gate of opinions, is that the fact that something can be constructed within a pattern does not mean that the result is necessarily truth. This is something that is so important to see. This is just another pattern, and there are so many patterns. And in understanding the nature of the body graph and the way in which the logic process operates, it's very difficult for any logical opinion to be able to attract enough energy to be able to manifest that opinion in reality. In other words, so much of the nature of opinion is that opinion is something that tends to be expressed verbally rather than something that can lead directly to action. It's one of the dilemmas of being designed as human beings to believe that our minds are capable of running our lives. And that it's so obvious when you're dealing with conceptualizing gates, the gates in which, in fact, we create, if you will, the illusion of the Maya that we live in. That the very fact that this is the place where it originates does not mean that in and of itself it has the capacity to act out on the concepts. It really does not. It's an ordeal for the 17th gate opinion to finally get to a place where that opinion can be either justified or rejected. And so often there is a deep frustration within the logical process. And of course the 17th gate, as a byproduct of this dilemma, tends to be argumentative in its nature. In other words, trying to establish through the potential to articulate, and remember, without the 16th gate there is no potential to even articulate. To try to articulate over and over again the pattern, the repetition of the pattern, in the hope that that pattern will ultimately be accepted. But I think one of the most unusual things about the 17th gate, along with the 18th gate, they carry with it a very special attribute. The process of challenge and correction in the 18th gate is all about the ultimately benefiting the collective. That is, its purpose is ultimately positive in that sense. The same thing is true of the 17th gate, and you can see this in lead-in in the Rei Vi Ching to the gate itself. It says, the ancient law that those who wish to rule must know how to serve. And it is one of the things about the nature of opinion, to really understand opinion archetypally, is to recognize something. That a concept that is logical, that does not serve the people, is not a concept that is going to find the embrace of energy. And this is one of the things to see. If one is going to have the capacity to lay down a foundation for the organization of the other, then that very foundation and the pattern that is laid out must ultimately serve the other. And it's only through this service to the other that the opinion ultimately is something that can enrich the collective life and will, in fact, find the energy resources that it needs. And so here in the 17th gate, and remember in the 6th line of the 17, is the line of the Bodhisattva. This is about both perfected following and perfected teaching in that sense. And it is this, it's the core of the 17th gate. if your opinions do not serve the larger whole, then they are not opinions that are ever going to be accepted by the larger whole. It's that simple. A male-dominated society that was 5,000 years old, it was highly sexist in its approach. This is just about work on what has been spoilt by parents as a substitute, if you will. In other words, this is where you learn how to challenge, and challenge for the benefit of the future. It is one of the enduring phenomena of one generation to the next, that there is a general trend that each generation tries to improve upon its upbringing. I will do a better job than they did. I didn't like the way they did that. If they had done that, I could have had this, and so forth and so on. In other words, one of the most fundamental challenges that we have, a root challenge that we have, has to do with the way in which we are brought up. This is not tribal. This is not about the tribal laws and the tribal rules and the tribal demands. This is very, very different. This is about the way in which a human being needs to be raised in order to participate in a collective society. And in order to participate in a collective society, it is this 18th gate that will challenge the generation that brought it into the world. And it will challenge them in the collective sense. The parent that has a basic prejudice, the collective child and the collective challenge, it will recognize that it cannot raise its children that way because they will have no place within the collective society and will not be comfortable within the collective society. So one of the first principles of the 18th gate is a determination to better the lives of their children and others. And it's that others that often brings in a dilemma. Remember something about the nature of the collective, that the keynote for collective circuitry is sharing. Every single aspect of collective circuitry, every single gate in the collective field is a gate that is fundamentally social and needs to share its process. The 18th gate is a gate that is constantly seeing what needs to be challenged. And as a collective gate, it needs to share what it sees, that it thinks must be challenged. And so everybody gets to hear about it. And of course, in many cases, those beings that operate out of the 18th gate who don't operate correctly as themselves are challenging things that are not of value to be challenged, and are challenging them in ways that alienate rather than find support. The vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. This is the essence of the 18th gate. The vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. And of course, this is one of the keys to the way in which we can operate safely in the future. Remember that the logical collective process is about establishing patterns that are reliable for us so that we can be secure in the future, and that our rights can be secured. And it is in the 18th gate that, the limitation on individual rights is challenged, and correctly so. And of course, the limitation on one's rights begins as a child, living within the constraints of what is being, relatively defenseless and dependent as an infant, dealing with these huge forces that manipulate and control your life. That it is the 18th gate that begins this process of challenging to make sure that their rights, that they have a right, that their basic rights are defended. It is only here in the collective logical process that the rights of the individual, that the rights of children, that the rights of women, that the rights of minorities is something that is defended, and it is something that is established as a pattern that can be of value to all of humanity. So whenever you think about the 18th gate and you're just concerned with the fact that it seems like it's bitching all the time or complaining all the time, recognize that that is all there for a purpose. Ultimately, it's to make sure that everyone has a better life, ultimately. But again, what one corrects, what one challenges. If you have a defined 18th gate and obviously a defined spleen, it's going to operate consistently. But it doesn't mean that what you challenge is correct unless you're correct as a totality. And if you have an open spleen, that 18th gate will often fail to challenge those that make it feel good by conditioning the spleen. And only in operating correctly can you truly challenge those things that need to be challenged and protect your individual rights. The 19th gate, the gate of approach, the gate of wanting. It's a very powerful gate, the 19th gate. It's at the source of so many things that are absolutely essential and fundamental. At least it appears that way to the way in which we live our lives. And it is a driving, deeply profound driving force in the nature of the way in which our communities are organized. The 19th gate is a tribal gate. It's part of the channel 1949, which is the channel of synthesis. It's a design of being sensitive. It has a deep mystical quality to it. It's also a cross-special channel. That is the relationship between humans and mammals. And the 19th gate is a deeply territorial gate to begin with. And one of the fundamental needs of the 19th gate is territory, is place. It needs to have its secure environment. And in that secure environment, it needs to have certain things. It needs to have the resources that are important to it, that is, essential resources. Everything about the 19th gate is about need. But it's not about need in the negative sense of how neediness can be envisioned. That quality of the neediness is something that can be seen in the emotional gates in this stream, that is the 49 and the 37. But in the 19th gate, what you really have is just this constant pressure. It's a mammalian trait. It's this constant pressure to find the territory, to find the resources. And that it's not a matter of, it's an imperative, even more than it's a need, if you will. There must be those things. And so when you have the 19th gate in your design, one of the things to recognize is how important these things are going to be for you in your life. Territory, the access to resources. It was one of my standing jokes whenever I would deal with somebody with an active 19th gate that I would remind him how important it was to keep the refrigerator full. I mean, even if they were living alone and they really didn't eat that much, just fill it up with empty boxes or something. But, fill up that refrigerator so when you open it up, there's this sense that all the resources are there. How important it is to have that savings bank account tucked away somewhere for the 19th gate. But more than that, the 19th gate is also looking for others to share the burden of territory and resources with it. And more than any other gate, the 19th gate is looking for a suitable partner. The only gate in comparison to this is the 54th gate, who's looking for somebody that can help them rise up in this life, in a career sense. The 19th gate is looking for somebody who will work with them in this life as a partner. And in more cases than not, as a partner in the sense of the tribal commitment of marriage, of the fixed bond. The 1949 is all about courtship at the sexual level. This need for resources meeting certain rules and limitations established by the emotional 49th gate, the gate of rejection, the gate of acceptance. And so in dealing with the 19th gate, you're dealing with a driving force. Now, of course, if you're not operating correctly, all of this becomes distorted. The need for territory is something that can become distorted. The need for material security can be distorted. The demands on the loyalty of the partner, all of these things can be distorted. Operating correctly is yourself. Then you're going to be able to bring into your life what you need, truly. Without that being something that is disturbed by the resistance field, that it's simply something that can be truly natural for you. That all things are interrelated is apparent and manifested through the action of approach. Now, approach is one of the four ways, and it's all about interrelatedness. It is about support at the deepest tribal level. And it is also about something else. It is the way of approach. This is a bold, adrenaline movement forward. And it is that very boldness of approach, to approach the other, to seek that bond with the other in order to find and secure the resources and territory, that it's this very approach that needs to operate correctly. Honor your strategy, follow your inner authority. The 20th gate, contemplation. 20th gate is in the throat. It's a deeply complex gate in the sense that it is the only verbal expression for the integration system. That is, it is the verbal expression that results from its relationship either with the 57th gate or the 34th gate or the 10th gate. So in that sense, through the 10th gate, it can express behavior. Through the 34th gate, it can express power. And through the 57th gate, it can express intuition. And all of those expressions are potential expressions that take place in the pure existential now. And this is the essence of the 20th gate. Every gate that is in the throat center, each and every one of these gates, they are gates that have a unique way of expressing themselves. When we're dealing with the 20th gate, we're dealing with a gate that says, I am now, or I am not now. And it is this nowness that's at the very core. So many people assume, given this name, contemplation, that in fact the 20th gate is a gate of pause, if you will, a gate where things are assessed. But we're dealing with a deeply individual gate in which everything operates in the now, on the pulse or not. This is not the opportunity to muse. This is all about the potential peripheral vision to allow one to operate correctly in the now. And what you see in the heading to the 20th gate is this recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action, or the potential of right action. And all of that is about the spontaneousness of that recognition and awareness. For me, the 20th gate is beautiful from another perspective, from its very construct as a hexagram. You know, if you look at the hexagram chop of the 20th gate, you will see that it has 4 yin lines. That is, the first, second, third, and fourth lines are yin, and the fifth and sixth lines are yang. And when, of course, you see that illustrated as the hexagram from the bottom upwards, what you're really looking at is a gateway. It's a gateway. And if you go back to the very ancient Confucian traditions in ancient China, and you can still see examples of these structures in the world. As a matter of fact, these gates were just created as a work of environmental art by building these gateways throughout Central Park in New York City. These gateways were spread out throughout China, and they were fascinating. You know, you would be walking along a normal pathway, and in the middle of that pathway, for no reason, is simply an arch that is a gateway. Now, it serves no purpose, and there is no gate. You know, there is simply this passage through, if you will. And the symbolism of the gateway is that as you're moving towards that gate, when you're finally in the gateway itself, this is the symbolism of the eternal now. And in that moment of the eternal now is the potential to simply be in the experience of being in the moment. Nothing more, nothing less. To be in that frozen moment, in the passage through the gateway, where all of the past flows behind you, where all of the future is in front of you. And yet every moment is a moment in which we move with the gateway. So here in the 20th gate, we have this potential of being rigidly in the now. Now understand the value of that. That when you look at the 57th gate out of the splenic center, that the 57th gate is one of the most powerful of all the survival fear gates, because it represents the fear of tomorrow. And that the fear of tomorrow is something that can be only eliminated by being in the now. So much of life, and so much of the potential of the good life, is overwhelmed by fears of tomorrow. And yet the true wisdom, and wisdom is one of the expressions of this gate, the true wisdom is to be correct in the now. And in being correct in the now, there's no need to be concerned about tomorrow. The 21st gate. Biting through. Quite a name. The gate of the hunter and the huntress. A gate operating out of the heart center, and the 21st gate is associated with the heart muscle itself. This is a gate of the power and the ego strength to be able to control and to be able to demand that others, give in to this controlling mechanism. Perhaps of all the tribal gates, no other tribal gate has so much direct influence and impact and can be both a positive and negative force within the context of the tribe, more powerful than any other, because it is its responsibility to actually be the synthetic meeting point of the diversity of tribal interests. The tribal circuitry is fascinating. The other major circuits all operate through the throat. That is, their goal is to reach expression in the throat. But everything about tribal circuitry is that its goal is to find its expression in the ego. That it is the ego that dominates the tribe. It's the ego that drives the tribe. And that the expression of the tribe is not something that comes direct, but is something that can only emerge through the interaction with the 21st gate and its capacity to take the essence of the tribe and deliver that message to the throat, to the 45th gate. So in looking at the 21, just reading the heading, the justified and necessary use of power in overcoming deliberate and persistent interference. In other words, it's always going to be a mistake within the tribe, to stand up to the 21 and try to fight with it. Because it is going to use all of its power, and it doesn't necessarily mean physical power. It's going to use all of its power to maintain control and to put down any rebellion. Remember something about the 21. If there's going to be a rebellion, it will lead it. Otherwise, there will be no rebellion. This is, after all, the nature of the 21st gate. Within the context of the tribe, it's really the 21 that, if you could see it in a modern corporate sense, you could see this gate as the gate of the president. And as the president of the organization, it is the hands-on director of the way in which the tribe is going to operate. The 21 is very good at controlling the diet, the dress, the cultural habits of the tribe. It's very good at controlling the territory. This is its nature. Now, there's something very difficult about the 21st gate, and what's difficult about the 21st gate is that the vast majority of humanity don't operate correctly, and if you don't operate correctly, the 21st gate is as much about chaos, its sixth line, as anything else. And that the enormous resistance level that 21s will meet in their process. The other thing is the very nature of the heart center. In the very nature of the heart center, the majority of humanity have an undefined heart center. And of course, this leads to enormous problems. Somebody who has the 21st gate, and the 21st gate in an undefined heart center, that they are subject to very profound conditioning. The amplification of their need to control, and at the same time their inability to maintain consistent control. The other thing is that for those that have the 21 out of a defined heart center, that unless they are operating correctly, this very mechanism is something that can create all kinds of difficulties for them in their personal process. So the 21st gate is very tricky. Now, it's very concerned with the ability to be able to maintain a successful material direction, and is very good at being able to guide others and control the way in which the movement towards a material destiny can be productive. 21 has a tremendous amount of potential in its ability to guide the tribe successfully. But then again, like in all things that we're dealing with, if the mechanics aren't right, if the 21 is not operating according to its nature, is not making decisions based on its strategy, then these become some of the most difficult forces, irritating forces that one can meet in life. The 22nd gate, the gate of grace in the emotional system. A quality of behavior best suited in handling mundane and trivial situations. What is that quality of behavior? The 22nd gate is really a very unusual gate. It's part of the channel, or the potential channel of openness, a design of the social being. And to begin with, this is an emotional gate. And one of the things that's so interesting about the 22nd gate is that the 22nd gate represents the way in which we hear abstractly. In other words, what we call in design the left ear. There's a real difference between the way we hear abstractly and the way we hear logically. That is, the right ear, the 57th gate, it hears things in the now. That is, this is a splenic process, and the hearing is rooted in the splenic condition. And the spleen is spontaneous. So the hearing that you hear, if you put the telephone, for example, to your right ear, whatever you're listening to, you're going to take in its essence, its complete essence, in the moment. But the 22nd gate is different. This is an abstract process related to the emotional system and the way of the emotional system, the wave of the emotional system. And the thing to recognize about the 22nd gate and its capacity to listen, its capacity to be open to the articulation of the other, its harmonic gate being the 12th gate, the gate of articulation, is that it is open, but it doesn't necessarily hear everything, at least not in the now. It's one of the best ways in which we can come to understand the emotional system itself, that the emotional system's frequency, the frequency of the wave, is all about our ability to be able to sample information, to be able to come to a clear conclusion based on a collection of samples over time. The thing about the 22nd gate as a hearing mechanism is that it only hears certain things in the now. The rest becomes available over time. It's ironic that most human beings will put the telephone to their left ear, and in fact do not really hear everything that's being said to them in that moment. And it's only later that they realize that certain things were said that they weren't listening to. So when we're dealing with the 22nd gate, we have to always keep in mind that this is an emotional process, and that the openness of the 22nd gate, is a process that is cyclical. The 22nd gate can be very closed off to hearing. In the same way that you can have a radio running in the background, and yet you're not really listening to it, nor do you really hear what is there or what is being said. You can kind of block it off, and this is something that the 22 can do. You can see that glazed look in that sense. The other thing is that we're dealing with individuality. We're dealing with the mutative potential of openness. How powerful openness can be. And that to see that the 1222 is the only social mechanism of the individual. So when dealing with the 22nd gate, there is this unique capacity to be open to the potential of mutation. Anyone, who carries the 22nd gate in a defined emotional system is consistently going through these cycles in which over time they can learn to truly grasp what they have heard. But remember something about the open emotional system. There is a great deal of avoidance in the strategy of the open emotional system. And the 22nd gate that's operating out of an open emotional system often refuses to hear anything but to participate behaviorally in the action. In other words, to appear to be listening, to appear to be hearing, in order to maintain a social presence, but in fact being very, very deaf to it. And this is one of the dilemmas of the 22 in an open solar plex system. The 23rd.